Thousands of New York City workers, including police and firemen, closed down the Brooklyn Bridge yesterday, protesting the city's vaccine mandate. Those who don't get the jab by Friday will be forced to take unpaid leave. And while Mayor Bill de Blasio is taking unvaccinated public servants off the street, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is spending thousands to attract them to his state. Yesterday on Fox News, the Florida governor announced that his administration wants to enact legislation that would pay scorned police officers across the country $5,000 to relocate to Florida.
But I can tell you, Maria, in Florida, not only are we going to want to protect the law enforcement and all the jobs, we're actually actively working to recruit out-of-state law enforcement because we do have needs in our police and our sheriff's departments. So in the next legislative session, I'm going to hopefully sign legislation that gives a $5,000 bonus to any out-of-state law enforcement that relocates in Florida. So NYPD, Minneapolis, Seattle, if you're not being treated well, we'll treat you better here. You can fill important needs for us, and we'll compensate you as a result.
DeSantis' pledge comes as police officers in liberal cities nationwide are rejecting vaccine mandates en masse, even if it means losing their jobs. According to CNN, COVID has been the leading cause of death among police officers since March 2020, with the virus killing 5 times more officers than gunfire since the start of the pandemic. Here to discuss are Sarah Riggs Amico, a former Democratic Senate candidate, executive chairwoman of Jack Cooper Investments, and founder of Our American Dreams PAC. She also ran for lieutenant governor in Georgia alongside Stacey Abrams. And Rachel Bovard, she's the policy director at the Conservative Partnership Institute. Welcome back to Rising to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And so, Rachel, what do you make of this fascinating statistic? Because people who have studied, police violence and policing know that it's actually, a quite safe occupation relative to other professions. So people might be surprised to learn that actually the highest cause of death since March 2020 among police officers has been COVID. Yet police are marching in the street to oppose having to take the COVID vaccine.
Well, I think they're responding in a way a lot of other people are responding, which is, look, we may support vaccinations, but we don't think it should be compulsory. We don't think it should be mandatory. And hey, where's the testing requirement that was supposed to be the alternative for a lot of these vaccine mandates? If you didn't want to get the vaccine, then you could subject yourself to a testing mandate. Apparently, that's out the window, too. I'd be interested, too, to see how many of these officers, we're assuming they're people who don't want to get vaccinated, but maybe they're just people that did get vaccinated and don't want it, as a principle, don't think it should be compulsory. So, I think when we look back on this period in time, I think, honestly, this is one of the worst vaccine rollouts maybe in history. Put a marker down now, just based on the mandates, the moving of the goalposts. Now you're not fully vaccinated unless you have a booster, forcing this on people, the shaming and shunning that's going on. You saw Joe Biden on CNN last week saying people like this should be fired. On the front, emergency workers, he said, if they don't get the vaccine, they should be fired. So this is the situation we're in now. I don't blame Ron DeSantis for attracting people to his state because, unfortunately, it's a market opportunity for him.
Well, it's one thing to attract people to the state, to have Florida be a welcoming place and a good place to live, good economy, and so on and so forth. But the libertarian in me does not like the idea of paying public employees more money to relocate. I don't know. What do you make of that plan, Sarah?
I think it's a tragedy when you talk about the leading cause of death among police officers since March 2020 being COVID-19. The fact of the matter is right now we have several, not one, not two, but 3 approved vaccines that have proven to be highly effective in preventing severe illness, hospitalization, and death. These are needless losses. And while I am always going to be sympathetic to a worker's right to organize and up to and including the right to strike and walk out, I'm also aware that many times firefighters are the first emergency responders to arrive on scene, whether that's in a car accident or a house fire or any number of emergencies. And as a citizen, I want to believe that we also have the right to expect those first responders not to be responsible for giving us a potentially deadly virus. This is clearly a tough place for many, many people, many workers. There are many people who have legitimate vaccine hesitancy. And I would encourage them to go to vaccines.gov, read the data, see the studies. We have some of the top scientists in the world in this country, and they've done enormous amounts of work to ensure these vaccines are safe. And the fact of the matter is, for the last year and a half, our hospitals have been overflowing in many parts of the country, as they have been here in Georgia, with COVID-19 patients. They're not overflowing with people who are sick from the vaccine. So in this instance, I'm going to side on the right of the public to be safe from first responders. They certainly have a right to decline vaccination, but the city of New York also has a right to mandate that they get it if they want to keep their employment.
But Rachel, to your point, these could be the striking people. They could be people who had COVID, recovered from it, and have what's called natural immunity, which we now understand is pretty robust protection, and they don't the choice to also to not get vaccinated as well. I'm not sure why that can't be a choice we respect. It's not the choice I would make, but that could be an alternative. And yet these mandates are coming down and are not including cases like that or getting testing. The federal mandate didn't have anything to do with that. Do you think that's driving a lot of frustration?
I think the one-size-fits-all approach is driving a tremendous amount of frustration because, as you point out, we've learned a tremendous amount about this disease as it's progressed. And one of the things we do know is that if you've had COVID and recovered from it, you do have a lot of natural immunity. That's out the window. Other countries allow you to present that as an alternative to a vaccine. Across the world, that's an accepted form of immunity, not here in the United States. And again, I remember when this, OSHA rule was first proposed by the Biden administration, everybody was like, well, it's fine. You can get a vaccine or you can get a test. It's a choice. Pick the one you want. Well, but as we're seeing this implemented throughout the country, that's not the case. It's, you get this vaccine, we're seeing religious exemptions denied. We're seeing health exemptions denied. This is one of the most heavy-handed things I think we've seen. And Americans don't respond well. And I think you're seeing that across the country. These emergency workers, I think, are case in point. And yes, New York can mandate that they get it as a term of their employment, but New York will then lose a number of their first responders. And I think that's, also a tragedy, especially in a city with one of the highest COVID death rates in America.
Yeah, and I think you're right that if you had a testing exception and a natural immunity exception, that the mandate would be much more broadly accepted. Florida State Senator Annette Taddeo joined the 2022 Florida gubernatorial race this week, adding to the growing number of Democratic challengers looking to unseat Ron DeSantis. The Hill's Max Greenwood writes, however, that defeating DeSantis will be easier said than done. One Florida Dem insider told Greenwood, quote, really, Republicans have this consolidated funding and support behind DeSantis, which just isn't something we have right now. He will be very difficult to beat. This is going to be a titanic task, but failure is not an option, end quote. Sarah, what do you think about your neighboring state? Do Democrats have a shot there, or is this effectively becoming a red state?
No, Democrats can absolutely win the state of Florida, especially in light of Governor Ron DeSantis's abysmal handling of the COVID-19 pandemics. As we all saw over the course of the summer, one of the worst hotspots in this nation for the Delta variant was in Florida. And that's largely due to the absolute failure of the policies the DeSantis administration has put in place. And we've seen with Commissioner of Agriculture Freed, Democrats can win that state nationwide. And we've also seen, in the last, I would say, 12 months, a remarkable movement by Democrats at the federal level to put cash and assistance, pandemic assistance, in the pockets of American families, including those families in Florida. I think Democrats have a great shot. And we've also seen in the 2020 presidential primary for Democrats, a contentious primary by no means weakens the out of power party. In fact, in the case of the 2020 presidential election, we saw that it yielded great results for Democrats. And here in Georgia in 2018, we had a very contentious Democratic primary between Stacey Evans and Stacey Abrams. And of course, Stacey Abrams has now gone on to be a national phenomenon. So a contentious primary can be very healthy for democracy, and Democrats are in a great position to take the state of Florida, particularly with a Latina candidate like Senator Taddeo.
I would only quibble with that Democratic operator when he says, for Democrats, failure is not an option. For Democrats, failure is always an option. They never take that off the table. But Sarah and Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Next on Rising, Insider's Kimberly Leonard will join to break down the stock sale that has Representative Mo Brooks in hot water. Stay tuned for that.